The knock came hard, sharp enough to rattle the thin door and the fragile peace inside the apartment. For a single dad who had spent years surviving on late nights, lukewarm coffee, and quiet sacrifices, that knock felt like judgment itself. It felt like the moment when everything he had been holding together with tired hands was about to finally slip. He stood frozen for a second, heart pounding, not knowing that the words about to be thrown at him would shatter him first, and then remake his entire life. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet strength of people who keep going even when life keeps taking from them, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this deserve to travel far. Ethan Miller had not planned to become a single father. No one ever does. One day he had been a husband with dreams of promotions and weekend vacations, and the next he was standing alone in a hospital hallway holding a tiny pair of shoes that no longer had a mother to wait for. His wife's passing had left a silence in his life that never truly went away, only learned how to coexist with routine. His days began before sunrise and ended long after his son, Liam, fell asleep. Small fingers still clutched around Ethan's worn t-shirt, as if letting go meant losing him too. Cool. Work was the only place where Ethan allowed himself to feel almost normal. He worked as a project coordinator in a mid-sized firm, the kind of job that demanded precision, reliability, and long hours. He was good at it, maybe too good, because people began to rely on him in ways that went unnoticed. Deadlines met quietly, problems solved without applause, late nights spent fixing issues no one else wanted to touch. He never complained. He couldn't afford to. Liam needed stability more than Ethan needed comfort. His boss, Clara Whitmore, was not like the others. She was sharp, successful, and intimidating in the way people became when they had fought their way to the top without much help. She noticed Ethan early on. She noticed how he never stayed late for small talk, but always stayed late for work. She noticed how he declined after-work drinks and company dinners with polite excuses that sounded rehearsed. She noticed how exhaustion clung to him like a second skin. What Ethan did not notice were the hints, the small shifts in her tone, the extra pauses when she looked at him. So, the offers to a talk sometime that lingered just a second too long. He assumed she was mentoring him, maybe even grooming him for a promotion. It made sense to him because he only understood life through responsibility, not subtext. His world revolved around school lunches, medical bills, and making sure his son never felt abandoned again. Meanwhile, Clara was watching a man who reminded her of everything she had lost chasing success. She had climbed high, but it had cost her relationships, warmth, and softness. Ethan's quiet devotion, his worn hands, his refusal to center himself in any room stirred something uncomfortable inside her. She dropped hints not out of strategy, but out of longing. She wanted him to see her as more than a title on an office door. When he didn't, frustration took its place. The night she knocked on his door was not planned. She told herself she was stopping by to discuss work, to address concerns about boundaries and professionalism, but the truth was messier. She had driven past his apartment twice before parking. She stood in the hallway longer than she wanted to admit, heels echoing against the floor as if counting down to something irreversible. Ethan opened the door with a tired smile that faded instantly when he saw her standing there, posture rigid, eyes blazing with a mix of anger and something else he couldn't name. The words came out harsh, final, and loud enough to cut through the thin walls. He was fired. No warning, no discussion. Just a declaration that his services were no longer needed. The door closed. Silence rushed in. Ethan leaned against the wall and slid down until he was sitting on the floor, staring at nothing. His first thought was not anger. It was Liam, school fees, rent. The fragile balance he had built collapsing all at once. He didn't sleep that night. He lay awake listening to his son breathe, counting each inhale as if it might disappear. The days that followed were brutal. Rejection emails piled up. Savings thinned. Pride dissolved. Ethan took whatever work he could find delivering groceries at night and fixing appliances on weekends. Liam noticed the change. He asked fewer questions, hugged a little tighter, and learned too early what it meant when adults were afraid. Then something unexpected happened. A former colleague reached out quietly at first, asking why Ethan had left so suddenly. Then another, then another. The story unraveled not through gossip, but through concern. Ethan never badmouthed Clara. He simply told the truth without bitterness. He had missed something. He had paid the price. So seek it. Word traveled to places Ethan didn't expect. Clients remembered him. Vendors vouched for him. A startup founder who had once watched Ethan calmly rescue a failing project called him in for a conversation. Not an interview. A conversation. That conversation changed everything. The new role paid less at first, but it offered something Ethan hadn't felt in years: respect without conditions, flexibility without guilt. He was allowed to be a father and a professional, not forced to choose between the two. Slowly, stability returned. Liam laughed more. Ethan slept better. The weight on his chest eased. Months later, Clara saw him again at a conference. He looked different, lighter. Not richer, not louder, just steadier. She wanted to apologize, to explain, to justify her anger, but she realized something standing there. He hadn't failed her. Oh, she had failed herself by expecting someone to read her pain instead of speaking it. Ethan didn't need closure. He had growth. Life didn't suddenly become perfect. Single parenthood never does. But something fundamental had shifted. Ethan no longer defined himself by what he lost, but by what he protected. His son grew up watching a man fall hard and stand back up without bitterness. That lesson was worth more than any salary. As the years passed, Ethan built a life that felt honest. He mentored others quietly. He helped single parents find opportunities. He never assumed intentions. He learned that kindness could be misread, silence misunderstood, and strength overlooked. But he also learned that integrity has a way of resurfacing when the noise fades. If this story stirred something in you, if it reminded you of a moment when life took something unfairly and gave you something better later, please take a second to engage with this video. Your likes, shares, and comments help stories like this reach people who need them most. Before the story ends, we have a special request. Comment below with one word that describes what this story made you feel. Sometimes one word is enough to remind us we are not alone. Ethan never heard that knock again, but its echo stayed with him not as fear, but as proof. Proof that even when a door closes in the harshest way possible, it can push you toward the life you were meant to live all along. The weeks after that conference marked a quiet turning point, not the kind announced with celebrations or sudden victories, but the kind that settled slowly into Ethan's bones and stayed there. Life continued with its familiar pressures, bills that arrived on time even when money didn't, school mornings that began too early, and nights when exhaustion pressed down harder than worry ever had. Yet something inside him had shifted. He no longer woke up with the same tight fear in his chest. He woke up with purpose, grounded in the knowledge that he was building something honest, something his son could stand on one day without shame. Liam grew quickly in those months, not just in height, but in awareness. Children sense change long before adults give it a name. He noticed how his father smiled more easily, how their dinners felt warmer even when they were simple, how laughter returned to the apartment in small, unexpected bursts. Ethan began to talk more, not about struggle, but about effort, about trying again even when things didn't go the way you hoped. He didn't frame himself as a hero or a victim. He framed himself as someone learning, and that lesson sank deep into his son. At work, Ethan earned trust the slow way. He didn't chase titles or recognition. He showed up, listened carefully, and fixed what others overlooked. People noticed not because he demanded attention, but because his presence made their jobs easier. He became the person others leaned on during moments of uncertainty, the steady hand when deadlines loomed and pressure mounted. Ironically, the very qualities that had gone unnoticed before now defined his value. Clara, meanwhile, unraveled in quieter ways. The company she had built her identity around began to change without her. New leadership styles emerged, softer, more collaborative, and her sharp edges no longer impressed the way they once had. Alone in her apartment on nights that stretched too long, she replayed that knock on Ethan's door. The anger in her voice, the way power had felt like protection in that moment. She began to understand how loneliness, when left unspoken, can harden into cruelty. She tried once to write an apology. It sat unfinished, deleted, rewritten, and deleted again. In the end, she never sent it. Not because she didn't regret her actions, but because she realized apologies are not always about being forgiven. Sometimes they are about accepting that you don't deserve absolution, only growth. Clara began to change too, but her path was slower, heavier, and lonelier. Ethan never learned the details of reflection, and he didn't need to. Closure came to him in different forms. It came the day Liam stood on a small school stage, nervously scanning the audience until his eyes found his father. It came when his son introduced him proudly to classmates as "my dad who never gives up." It came late one night when Ethan caught his reflection in the mirror and saw not a man defined by loss, but one shaped by endurance. There were setbacks. There always are. A sudden expense. A missed opportunity. A night when the fear crept back in, whispering doubts about the future. But now Ethan met those moments differently. He didn't panic. He planned. He didn't retreat inward. He reached out. He learned that strength didn't mean carrying everything alone. It meant knowing when to ask for help without shame. Years passed quietly, as meaningful years often do. Liam grew into a thoughtful teenager, grounded and kind in a way that surprised teachers and neighbors alike. When asked where he learned that kindness, he never hesitated. He learned it by watching. Watching a man show up every day, even when no one was applauding. Watching a man choose patience over bitterness. Watching a man rebuild without needing revenge. One evening, as they sat together on the couch, the city lights flickering outside their window, Liam asked a question he had been holding on to for a long time. He asked if losing his job had been the worst thing that ever happened. Ethan thought about it carefully. He thought about the fear, the humiliation, the sleepless nights. Then he thought about everything that followed. He told his son the truth. It felt like the worst thing at the time, but it turned out to be the moment that forced him to find who he really was. That answer stayed with Liam. Ethan's life never became perfect, but it became real. And real, he learned, was enough. He found peace not in titles or validation, but in the quiet knowledge that he had done right by the one person who mattered most. The knock that once felt like the end became, in hindsight, the beginning of a life built on clarity instead of confusion. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of your own struggles, losses, or unexpected second chances, please take a moment to like, share, and engage with this video. Your support helps stories of resilience and humanity reach others who may be standing at their own closed doors right now. Before we end, we have one last special request. Comment below with a single word that represents what you're holding on to today. Hope, strength, faith, healing. Let your word be a quiet promise to yourself, because sometimes the moments that break us are the very ones that teach us how to stand taller than we ever did before.